Hello again, everyone. Chris Hughes, Carolina Prep's coming back to you. Another one of our coaching Zoom sessions. This morning, we're going to be joined by the newly named head football coach of the Jordan Falcons, Jordan High School, Durham, North Carolina, Coach Justin Allred. Coach, pleasure is all mine to be able to invite you on here to kind of introduce you to the rest of North Carolina. I've known how good a coach that you have been and could be for a number of years now, but it does me proud to see you get this big opportunity. So thanks for joining me this morning and welcome here to the program.
Chris, thanks for having me, man. We're all excited to have you back in the saddle and getting back after it. I know what you've been to me as a young coach and how you've mentored and helped me, and I'm excited to have you back and looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, and hopefully we can do things. Do some good things and help some people along the way. So before we really talk about this new job, we'll get there. Just want to introduce you more, allow the fans of Durham who may not know you. You got a lot of people that you've coached along the way at Rose High School in Greenville. So just really want to give an opportunity to kind of introduce who Justin Allred is to the rest of North Carolina. Grew up, and if I'm wrong, correct me on this, but grew up in Randolph County, went to Eastern Randolph County. Now, did you go to college at ECU?
I got my master's at East Carolina.
Okay,
I did my undergrad at Campbell, yeah.
Oh, you went to Campbell. Okay, there you go. So you moved east, became a coach at J.H. Rose High School. Now, was that your first coaching stop?
Yes, sir.
Working under Coach Dave Wotecki. Became the offensive coordinator, and one hell of an offensive coordinator I forgot to put out there. State championship game. Was your first year there?
Yep. 2015 against Charlotte Catholic. That was my first year's OC.
That was a great football game, by the way. I know you guys came just a little bit short, losing to Catholic. A lot of teams have lost to Charlotte Catholic in state championship games, by the way. A lot of really good teams. First 5 or so years, averaged upwards of 49, 46, 40 points a game as an offensive coordinator. So obviously what you were doing was really working from a football X's and O standpoint. Then kind of to come full circle in your background, named here recently the head coach at Jordan High School. But for someone that doesn't know who you are, kind of coming onto the scene as an assistant, never really in the public eyes much, maybe other than there in Greenville, kind of give the fans and the other coaches and everybody watching just a little bit of a background of who you are and maybe what led you to want to go down this road to become a football coach.
Man, ironically, when I came to ECU, I was still thinking the medical school dream. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Came down here, did the master's in public health, got a really good job working at family medicine, but it wasn't fulfilling. Something was wrong. I didn't feel like it was going to be my life's path. And I sat down with my father, who's been a huge source of guidance for me in my life. And he said, well, if you're not happy, then you need to figure out what you want to do. I sent an email over to Tommy Peacock at Rose. Yeah, I grew up a Demon Deacon. I grew up a Wake Forest fan. And they had just gotten Anthony Rook from J.H. Rose. And I said, I'm gonna take a stab at it and see what happens. I didn't even know where the high school was. I hadn't even been by it yet. So he said, yeah, we're understaffed. We're going through a head coaching change. We'd love to interview you and whatnot. I showed up, and I guess, as they say, the rest is history. I didn't play college football, so it was kind of a unique thing getting into the coaching world. There was a lot of things I had to learn. I played in high school, but of course it was, it's a different world being on the other side of the whistle.
Sure.
So having to develop, I had great mentors. Dave and Will were always teaching me different things and helping me along. DJ Williams, some of the guys that I knew early on, kind of sculpted my X's and O's. And I tried to do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that in the event I was given opportunities to advance, I was ready.
Right. And it didn't hurt when you finally got the opportunity, at least as an offensive coordinator. You had that guy named Cornell Powell, who's still, I think, one of the best receivers I've seen. I would put him in the top 10 of best receivers I've seen in the state. I mean, it helps to have a talent like that to build off of.
Man, the sad part is the rest of the state only got to see Friday nights. Some of the most special things he did were Monday through Thursday. It, I've been blessed here in the East with tons of athletes. Cornell, Caleb, EJ, some of the guys that really made us special. You know, Ryan, GC, some of the they were always quality players. We never really hurt for good players and good kids. So, you know, my resume I like to think is impressive, but it really wasn't due to me. It was
Sure.
largely in part to the young men that were further in that.
That's every coach. That's nothing unique to you. Kind of taking a step back to Randolph County. So you was at Eastern Randolph. So I assume that as a child and a fan of football and just as a high school student and just kind of you probably looked up to Burton Cates. He had things really rolling back in those days.
Burton, he was the head coach, and then my offensive coordinator, Greg Harden, was one of the biggest influencers in my life at that time. You know, we always looked up to Coach Harden. He had a perfect score on the SAT. So not only was he our offensive coordinator, he did our SAT prep after school. So it was that was a legendary staff. There were some quality coaches at pretty much every position on that staff. And looking back, I don't think we realized how good we had it in that moment.
No question about that. And also, it kind of sheds some light. If you've got a perfect score coach or the SAT, maybe he shed some knowledge on you, and that's how you probably could have went off and been Dr. Allred right now.
Exactly,
Coach Allred.
exactly. If I'd have paid more attention in those SAT preps, then and I probably would have. But you know, at the end of the day, Coach Harden, we were multiple. You know, he taught me about route trees and route running and different things there. He was our offensive line guy. So being a tight end myself, I spent a lot of time pretty close to him.
Sure.
And he was a quality coach. Coach Cates, same thing. He was a stickler for details. You know, if it wasn't perfect, it wasn't right, run it again. And that was something that I still pull on today as a coach.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit of X's and O's. Moving into this new role now, do you have any idea about the staff? Have you been able to put together a staff yet at Jordan?
Man, this COVID stuff's got everything slowed down quite a bit. It feels like some days it feels like we're running a marathon, and some days it feels like we're trying to get out of quicksand.
Right.
There's ideas in place. There's people ready to go. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz around it. But until things are a little bit more normal, it's hard to put everything on paper.
Right. I totally understand that. But I'm trying to get to the basis. I'm assuming that you most likely would call your own plays, at least to begin with, given your expertise and how well you've done as an offensive coordinator. What would you kind of characterize your schematic or your philosophy as a play caller and what kind of offense in a perfect world that you want to run? I mean, obviously every good coach is going to say that they're going to base it based off the talent they have. So it could be fluid and change from year to year. But every coach has his core principles and beliefs that they want to get behind. What would you characterize yours, at least from the offensive side of the ball?
I've always been a big proponent of a simple to understand. It's very generic in terminology so that it plays quick. 4 wide receiver spread, but it's a power spread. I want to stay as balanced as possible. One of the things that we were able to do over the last 5 years was make sure that not necessarily touches were balanced, but make sure that actual plays were balanced, 50% run, 50% pass. And it was never more than 5% off per season, not just per game. I mean, we were season-long balanced. That to me in an ideal world would be where we are. You know, you're kind of at the mercy of your quarterback and their ability, your wide receiver. You know, at that point, it becomes about the strength of your team. But at the end of the day, in a perfect world, staying balanced, being able to throw it, and you got to be able to take a shot. You know, if you're going to spread the field horizontally, you got to be able to attack it vertically. And that's some of the things that I've been successful with in the past is know when to pick times to take those shots, when to dial it back, and that'll be something going forward that we'll key in on at Jordan.
Right. You mentioned, some different positions, your quarterback. Do you feel like everything should be based around the quarterback because he is kind of the CPU or the computer, the brains of an offense? Or, some coaches, and I may lean a little bit more to the offensive line, your center, your line. I mean, without them, nothing's going to get moved and nobody's going to be able to block and nobody's going to be able
Right.
to perform. I mean, what do you see as your foundation or your number one cog in your greater scheme?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. When I first took over as OC at Rose, we did have Cornell Powell. We had this magic tool that you could kind of move around and do things with. And there were a lot of people in the community and around that told me, Coach, your best player needs to be your quarterback. You got to snap the ball to him. He's got to touch it every play. But I got to thinking about it, and I realized that if I moved Cornell to wideout, I could motion him across the field and completely change the defense. We could make better matchups for other players because we moved Cornell from one position to the other before the snap of the football. At the end of the day, you're right, though. If your offensive line can't block, Cornell doesn't look as good as Cornell does.
Sure.
We don't have time to throw the money balls to him and or get him out in space and let him work with screens and do different things. Your offensive line is definitely the core unit of your group. Once you have that, after that, you got to look at your quarterback, their skill set. Are they a mobile guy? Is it a pocket passer guy? Is it someone that couldn't run out of the pocket if he tried? And then from there, you build kind of within your scheme where you're going to focus. I don't believe you change your scheme because of one player, but you definitely change the focus of your scheme. When we had mobile quarterbacks like this past season with Wade, Wade Jarman, he was dual threat. We could run more option, more zone stuff. We got in a lot of two-back sets because we were better that way. But in the past with Ryan, and we had Cornell outside, GC, taking advantage of the full field from sideline to sideline with our skilled players, we had the offensive line to actually help them to do that. And getting them in space, letting them run. We were more athletic up front than we were like just road grading and moving people. So you look at all those factors and then you start putting together bi-weekly plans to make sure that everybody's in a good position. You may see us on one Friday and we'll look completely different than another, but we're still within the system.
Right. Well, now that I know you should have been Dr. Allred, I can kind of sense you watching huddle with your lab coat on and your big glasses and scheming your offense that way. And kind of with that being said, how do you approach each game, your game plan from a game to game week? Do you go in with a script and you know exactly what you're going to do and you stick to it, or do you allow the game to dictate what you do? Obviously, everybody's got, their tendencies of third and long or second and long or third and short or so on and so forth. How do you approach your game planning and how you go in to call the plays?
I think that's something that grows with you more than anything. My very first game, I knew I needed a script because it's a lot to process from minute to minute. I went in with a 20-play script. I worked my tail end off all week on that 20-play script. I maybe got through 2 plays and then had to switch focus and go a different route. You definitely want to now. I only take in a 10-play, pretty general first opening drive script, and then you've got your situational things. But at a point, you can drop that call sheet. And it may be 3 plays in, it may be fourth quarter, it might be overtime. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes you got to be willing to throw the call sheet down and say, okay, I've been in the game with the guys. That's something that's been nice. Dave always said, where are you more comfortable? Do you want to be in the booth or do you want to be on the sideline? Being on the sideline for me gave me a pulse of what was going on a little better than being upstairs. When you are in the moment and you're feeling the flow of the game, you don't really have time to be, looking and flipping and going with it. So you start just calling. When you can get in that rhythm early, man, we would throw up tons of points because it was a sense of we're playing football. We're not playing what happened Monday through Thursday game.
Right. And I've been in this situation, back in my coaching career, calling plays. And it's funny, I was talking to a great friend of mine, a longtime veteran head coach, Chris Norman, who was the longtime head coach at Shelby, one of the best coaches, I think, in the history of North Carolina. And we were talking about coaching philosophy and calling plays, and it's funny that you bring up, the call sheet and everything, because he says, you show me a young head coach or a young offensive coordinator, a young play caller, and I want to show you from a defensive perspective, he's going to tell me everything he knows and about his first 10 plays he calls, because he don't understand how to hold things back, and he's just going to throw them out there in succession, one right after the other. And by the time the second or third quarter rolls around, he knows everything that young coach knows, because he went straight by the sheet. And also, it's like he wanted you to know everything he knew.
Well, throughout the week, when we script practice, where I would script my different segments of practice, and I would actually keep notes with each play that was called, what went right, what went wrong, plus minus gains, that kind of thing. So when I sat down to call sheet, it wasn't just throwing crap at a wall to see what would stick. It was, okay, I've seen this play work against scout look. I know I'm safe here. So the 10-play script was usually, where am I safe, where are my wrinkles, and where are my shot plays? Because that first drive, you want to set the tone. So, some weeks I would walk into a game going, man, these first 10 plays, they're all money. We got to get through them at some point tonight, whether we get through them in order or not. We got to get through them. But then, you walk out on the field and all of a sudden you're getting a different look, and you go, well, that perfect 10-play script is crap. It might as well just figure it out from here. And that's where I was blessed with a quality staff that was able to make adjustments and move things really easy. And that's what I'll look to build at Jordan is guys that are succinct with their input and know exactly where they think the ball should go.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Jordan now, taking over for really successful head coach and Anthony Barber, one of the most finest gentlemen I've met. Think a lot of him, not only as a coach, but as a player back in the day at Garner and NC State, just a truly special athlete. But you take over to school and unfortunately, this is a time in our life, a global pandemic, things going on that we'll never have or that we've never experienced before. And you are having to try to be a head coach, and not just a head coach, a first-time head coach, and try to implement your program and start your plan in the most unconventional of ways, meetings online, and just so many different obstacles that nobody's ever had to face. Kind of just give us an idea of what it's been like these past few weeks, trying to be a head coach and having to essentially do it online virtually.
I guess I'm blessed in the sense I've never taken a head coaching job where I wasn't having to do it this way. So this feels kind of normal at this point. It's kind of been a fresh set of eyes on different things, because team meet, we had the press conference and they had a brief team meeting. Then Tuesday night we have a virtual Zoom team meeting, and it was a very different vibe. It's one thing when you're in the front of the room and guys are looking at you and you're able to convey your message. It's another thing whenever you have to mute everybody so that you can cancel out the background noise and be able to be heard. That's been unique. The communication back and forth. I'm still in Greenville because you can't go look at homes and you can't, plan your next move. So it's unique in that way. But for the most part, you're always on social media. You're always in a group chat. You're always on Zoom, or you're checking your email. If you're not doing one of those four things, then you feel like you're missing time. But knowing when to dial it back, knowing when to speed it up is just kind of a thing where I'm kind of guessing at to a degree, but at the same time, you try to be proactive and make sure you don't let problems happen because you weren't doing something you should have been doing.
Right. We talked about some of the guys that you've idolized as a coach. We mentioned Coach Cates and obviously working with Coach Wotecki and some of the guys down there, Coach Bland at Rose. This is again unprecedented time for you becoming a head coach. Who are some of the coaches right now that when you have questions, you need a mentor, you need somebody to talk to? Who are some of the guys that you are kind of leaning on in this transitional time for you?
Man, there's the list grows daily. Probably the biggest one in this whole process of finding a head coaching job, finding the right fit, finding where I needed to be. Ryan Gieselman at Kinston is the dude. Now, if you've got a football question, that man's like a walking encyclopedia of jobs and who's there and who you need to know. And it would be wild. I'd take an interview and I wouldn't mention it to Ryan, and then day of, he'd text me, and how did it go with so-and-so? Like, how did you know I was there?
Welcome to my world. People are always, coaches are always asking how I know who's interviewing, but it's
There's
just one
a
of those little trade secret, I guess. But I can understand where you coming with him, but I kind of get those same things.
Right. And so, with him doing that, I've been able to, trying to expand my knowledge of X's and O's, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Not necessarily from how things work, but how you install, how you plan a defense. I've done it offensively for years, but planning to install a defense, I wanted some help. A young coach at South Central High School, Bud Vinson, is going to be one heck of a ball coach, a head ball coach in the near years. He definitely has his head on straight. He's been a huge source of that. And I mean, the list goes on. I'm sure I'm forgetting people, but at the end of the day, it's a network of young coaches in North Carolina that maybe go unseen at times, that are really helping each other grow and helping each other succeed.
And yesterday I did my very first assistant coach showcase, and I did it, and the reception has been incredible. And there's so many young coaches. I was able to find and identify you as someone I thought would be a great coach, but it almost makes me pinch myself and think, man, why didn't I do something like that years ago? Because you're right, there's so many young coaches who I think are going to be the next. The next big time guys out there, the next Burton Cates or the next Anthony Barber or whoever, you insert the most successful names now. And it's great that you guys are able to work together and help one another.
Yeah. And that's the unique part of it is, we sit in these legend panels and they're perfect. You can't, as a young coach, you can't go to one of those and not draw on something. Coach Hickman is doing a series for the Eastern North Carolina Coaches Association where he's interviewing college coaches and legends of the game at high school level in North Carolina. And everyone you watch, you can draw one thing that you can take back with you and use. But the young group of guys, the core guys, I know east of 95 anyway, these guys out here are willing to share anything and teach you anything. Even if they're in your conference at South Central, they're willing to help you and grow you. And that's, you can't beat that, man. You can't beat this time in our field.
You're still a young coach, although you're not really a young man, but you're young enough. Probably about 15 years younger than me, maybe. I don't know. And you haven't coached your first head coaching game yet, but I still think you're an extremely experienced coach, and you've been around. When you have that next young guy, when I say young guy, maybe a 23, 24-year-old guy fresh out of college who's coaching, and he comes and asks Coach Allred, hey, what should I do here? What's, if you could look back in your career and if you could mentor somebody, what's something that you would tell a young coach trying to come into the game, trying to come into this profession, and try to prepare himself, not to be a head coach today? Because I think, and I remember when I was a 29-year-old coordinator working for Russell Stone at Douglas Byrd, I thought I knew everything. I thought I could have been a head coach that day. In reality, I didn't know anything. Well, I did, but I didn't. Now, closer to 45 years old, I think even though I've been away from the game for 10 years, I think I could be a great head coach today because of what I learned. But likewise, you've got experience now. What would your lesson if a young coach asked you just to prepare himself to get to that next level that he's wanting to attain?
Oh, that's an easy one. Get you a Cornell Powell. No, the biggest thing I'll tell you is networking. Networking at times is one of the most frustrating things that we do in our profession, but at times it can be a ton of fun. For instance, whenever I met you, we met in New Bern at a East North Carolina Coaches Association clinic, and I specifically went that day to speak to you. It was just a chance to sit and say, okay, this is someone that I know that has tons of knowledge and wisdom about the game, has been around it, knows everybody everywhere. That's a guy I need to know. Not being ashamed to sit at a table and have a conversation at a clinic with another group of coaches from somewhere else. Be loyal to your group, but be willing to meet other people. You're never going to know when a text message or a phone call might be something that can help you or guide you and teach you something that you didn't know before. But at
Yes.
the same time, while you're doing that, and perfect your craft. You can't get so bound up in learning from other people that you don't teach yourself some things and expand your own thought process.
Absolutely. And I love that you bring up the networking piece because I mean that's how I've gotten to where I'm at in this business. And I know football. I mean, I may not be the smartest football guy, and I might know more than some guys and no less than others, but I do feel like I could teach a doctorate level class on networking football coaches because that's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
I've done for 15 years. But on the other hand, and you make perfect sense because I like how you say be loyal to your group. And I look at Coach Woteki's guys at Rose. I mean, you guys are always together. You can tell the loyalty and the camaraderie amongst your staff because any clinics you go to, you always are sitting together. Coach Giesman's always there with him as
yeah.
well.
Oh yeah.
But you're also willing to go out and shake hands and meet other people and learn what other people are doing. So I've seen you guys work that, and it's obviously worked very well. So that's some great advice. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Before I let you go today, though, you really haven't had an opportunity to meet a lot of the parents or fans or supporters at Jordan High School. And this could be some of them's first opportunity really to see you, see what you look like, kind of learn who you are. What is the one thing, if you wanted to just in a synopsis, just to tell them who you are, the one thing you want them to take away from this, if they're trying to kind of learn what kind of man, teacher, coach that you are, what would you want them to know?
Whew. Uh, for me, I think the biggest thing is football wasn't something that I had to do. Football was a passion, and there's a new energy that's coming to Durham Jordan High School. Uh, Not to change everything that's been done, but to enhance it and take it to the next level. Um, I feel that my ability to stay organized and prepared, the ability for me to relay messages to kids and to parents is going to change how we approach the game of football and how we view that football program. And I think that without that, they would continue to be where they've been. And I want to set the expectation as high as possible, almost unattainable, and strive for that every day. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. That's something we've done at Rose now for a while. It's kind of ingrained in me as a coach. So be ready for unrealistic expectations and us to strive, at the highest level of energy for them every single day.
Hey, that's a great response. I like that. Uh, you know, Hopefully here in about 20 years when I'm a really old man and I'm still hanging on covering this sport, you might have about 10 state championships by then. Who knows? You may be the next Tom Knotts. But I always like to ask this question when I get some guys, I kind of put them on the spot with a podcast or something like that. But football has an expiration date. Players can't play forever. Coaches can't coach forever. Eventually, we either move on or we pass on to the other side. But when your days are dead and gone, and people think back at who Justin Allred is, what's the one thing you want people to think about you when they think about what kind of coach or what kind of teacher you were?
I want them to sit back and go, wow, he coached me hard and he loved on me afterward. I want them to believe that I was as quality as they could get at that time and that they wouldn't have wanted anyone else to do that job.
Yeah, it goes back to the way I parent my kids, and I know you've got a young child at home. I tell them every day, I'm not here to be your best friend.
Right.
It's my job to get you ready for adulthood, and the same thing when I was coaching. It's my job not to get you ready for the NFL because 0.1% of 1% really get to that next level. I want you to be a good citizen. I want to teach
Right.
you what it's like to succeed in life and to get you ready for that next level. Because again, football doesn't last forever. But it goes back to what they say. The players don't care what they know, what you know, till they know how much you care. And once you show them that, I think they'll do anything for you.
Right. And that's the biggest piece of it. One of my favorite coaches of all time is Bruce Arians. And in the Football Life on NFL Network, that's what he says. I'm going to be tough on you. I'm going to push you, but it's not personal. It's all about your football. I'm correcting your football. I love you as a man, but I'm going to be on you about that. So that's the way I try to approach the game, and I push my guys, I push them hard, and then they know that anything they need, the phone is always on. You know, even though I'm my spirit and my mind are in Durham right now, you know, my phone is still here in Greenville, and I still talk to former players and discuss different things with them, different ideas. So you never leave a kid ever. They're always part of your family. They're always part of your life. And that's something that even at my age and as a coach, I realize is one of the most important things you can do for your legacy.
Yes, I agree. Uh, well, now, now that we've had this 30 or so minutes to talk, I'm really starting to understand even more than I knew about Coach Allred. And, I knew you were going to be a great head coach, and you're going to be, but now to kind of peel some layers back and see what makes you tick, I'm even more impressed. So I've got to thank you for coming on with me. Any final thoughts for you? Any questions that you've got, or just anything that you want to talk about?
Man, Chris, I remember whenever the news broke that you were going to step away for a little while, and I remember thinking, wow, I knew what you have done for me, and it was kind of a shock, and it's really nice to be able to sit here, see you with that CarolinaPreps.com shirt on, and know that you're back in the game, because the site, the network, it just wasn't the same without you, man. We're glad you're back. We're looking forward to this. Whatever season we get to have this year, we're looking forward to it and ready to get after some ball. Let's do it.
Well, maybe it's going to be a virtual season, and our teams play Madden against each other. I don't
Hey,
know, but whatever it is, we'll
my
compete.
guys will be ready.
We'll be ready. Well, Coach Allred, I appreciate your time today, as always. We've enjoyed these Zoom sessions with different coaches around the state, and we're going to continue to do them. I've got about 3 or 4 more scheduled today. So, guys, keep staying tuned to us. But for Coach Allred and just everybody that supports us here at the Carolina Preps team, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back, and we'll catch you later.